Today I've got another keto and crime classic for you. Today we are going back to the original televangelist scandal, the one that made my granny blush. Jim and Tammy Faye Baker and the infamous PTL Club. And right now we're watching a clip of a classic PTL episode. This is probably from the late 70s, early 80s. As you can see, there's Jim and Tammy and a guest of people that hung out in their living room in North Carolina for the first few years of the show before they graduated up to the big studio they eventually got. But as you can see, the majority of these people look as though they just barely escaped Gary Larson's Far Side comic before they came to visit with Jim and Tammy Faye. But anyway, this is the original scandal. So in this classic video of mine from 2018, I go back and go over Jim and Tammy Faye's entire life, their scandal, the dealings they had with 𝗟𝗂𝗏 Sr., who I also covered in my other televangelist series. So I'm going to officially consider this the fifth part of that televangelist series. So as I said, this to me is one of the originals. I also have some others that I'll eventually add to this, but I thought you would enjoy it. The original big scandal, apart from Jimmy Swaggart, but that's an entirely different story. Maybe I'll do that one too. But here we are, the original godly scandal, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. And with that, let's go back to 2018, Tracy, telling you about this scandal that started all the way back in the 50s and 60s and came forward into the early 2000s. Let's hit it.
Hey everyone, Keto Comic here, coming at you with another crime video. It's Wednesday, White Collar Crime Wednesday. I'm in the truck because I don't want to disturb the wife, still sleeping in the RV because it's early. I'm still in California, having a great time. Had a great show last night. I do have a recorded show coming for you very soon from the club in Burbank, so we'll have that up soon. And today we're delving back into the world of televangelists, to a very interesting one that pretty much is the signature scandal in the televangelist world, and that's Jim and Tammy Baker and the PTL Club. Let's get into it. Jim Bakker was born January 2nd, 1940 in Muskegon, Michigan, to Raleigh Baker and Fernia Irwin. They were married at the time. I don't know why it gave her maiden name, but that's what it did. They were also a minister. At least his dad was a minister. They were members of the Assemblies of God denomination, which is a Pentecostal denomination. They believe in speaking in tongues, the laying on of hands, and most of these evangelists you see are coming from a Pentecostal type of background where they actually believe in the personification of the powers through the Spirit. So you're going to see a lot of that when we cover these. Tammy was born Tamara Faye LaValle in International Falls, Minnesota, March 7th, 1942, to Rachel Minnie and Carl LaValle. They were basically, it's a shotgun wedding. They had to get married. They got married in 1941. Tammy was born in 1942, and they divorced in 1942. So it wasn't a very good marriage. Ironically, both of Tammy's parents were Pentecostal ministers and a traveling evangelist, just like she would turn out to be. And after their divorce, her mother, Rachel, who had been a huge influence on Tammy, kind of soured on the church and soured on religion, because she felt that she had made a mistake by having premarital sex and getting pregnant out of wedlock, but that she felt she had made that right by marrying the father and trying to make it work. But when that didn't work, she kind of blamed God, and she basically turned away from the ministry at that point, was never an active member. This had a huge negative effect on Tammy, and she was never quite the same. Even though she felt in her heart she wanted to serve God, she wasn't so sure, and so she set her sights on fashion and ended up moving to Minneapolis to attend North Central Bible College, which was an Assemblies of God college that offered a variety of degrees, she was just working on a basic Bible degree, which has always confused me. She wasn't quite sure if she wanted to be in the ministry. Why did she go to a Bible college? But she did. And Mr. Jim Bakker, who was a decent student in high school, had always known he wanted to be an evangelist like his father, also attended North Central Bible College in Minneapolis, and they met while there. Jim was working as a waiter in a restaurant. Tammy, though she pursuing that interest in fashion and makeup, actually was working at a small boutique called Three Sisters in Minneapolis when they met. And they ended up marrying in 1960 and had 2 children. Their son Jay, who was born in 1975, Jay Bakker, you can actually Google him. He is a well-known minister today. He has totally split with the Assemblies of God, but which is who his father remained affiliated with. And he is a very liberal minister. He runs one of those all-inclusive megachurches in Oregon, where he believes that the Bible's ever in flux, completely goes against his father's teachings, and believes the Bible's constantly in flux, that everyone is saved, everyone's a child of God, that the passages about homosexuality and those sort of things are outdated and should not be taken into account. So he's just a very liberal minister, and thank you so much, Helicopter. One of the hazards of filming al fresco outside. They're gone now. But they did marry, had the 2 children. Jay's a very liberal minister. Google him, YouTube him. He has some very inspirational messages, I think. Still, I'm not religious. I don't really get into it. But if I had to go to a church, I could definitely get into his. Pretty cool dude. Ironically, he more followed in his mother's footsteps, which you will see how she changed after she divorced Jim Bakker, and kind of threw off the bondage of the very fundamentalist religion that they were in and kind of went the other way. So Jay definitely followed in her footsteps. In 1966, the Bakkers left the Bible College in the cold of the Minnesota area behind and moved to South Carolina, where they started working on books and tapes for children. They also got involved with Pat Robertson. Yes, that Pat Robertson.
Because his wife, as he knows her, is gone.
Robertson, an ordained Baptist minister for 50 years, responded.
I know it sounds cruel, but if he's going to do something, he should divorce her and start all over again. But, you know, to make sure she has custodial care, and if he says in a sense she is gone, he's right. It's like a walking death. So.
It's not.
And got involved in his fledgling CBN, a Christian Broadcasting Network, and started working on the 700 Club as background people, also as co-hosts, and helped build that from just a few thousand fans up to what it is now. So they learned a lot of what they know about Christian broadcasting from Pat Robertson. While there, they also perfected their ministry for children based on puppets. Think of it as Mr. Rogers and 𝗷𝐿𝐽𝐷𝐿 meets Jesus. Got a clip for you.
From coast to coast, it's time for the nation's biggest yard party, the Jim and Tammy Show.
And they also, as I said, worked very close with Pat, helped build his ministry up, and then left his ministry in 1972 to join with Paul and Jan Crouch. Yes, that Paul and Jan Crouch.
We have awesome news tonight. Dear friends, first of all, buenos noches, amigos. This program tonight is being simultaneously translated into the Spanish language and is going live to all of Latin America. That's...
who is responsible for what we know now as the Trinity Broadcasting Network, second only to CBN, as one of the largest Christian broadcasters in the country. And Jan's hair is known only to Tammy's as being more purple, and who wears the most makeup, we don't know. But here's some pictures of Mr. Robertson, as well as Trinity Broadcasting's Holy Land experience. This is a theme park they own in Orlando. Think of it as Mickey Mouse with Jesus. So this is the type of thing that they have been in since the beginning. They weren't just satisfied to be tent preachers, traveling church preachers. They wanted to get it out in mass and make a healthy living doing it. So with the Crouches, they helped build a Christian broadcasting empire, and based largely on the expertise of Jim Bakker. He was pretty brilliant at this. And in 1976, along with Trinity, they launched their PTL, the Praise the Lord Club, which kind of functioned as a Jimmy Kimmel, Johnny Carson, Stephen Colbert type of late night talk show, where they put on all sorts of guests. They had ministers like Jerry Falwell and Jimmy Swaggart on there. They also had celebrities like Mr. T, Mickey Rooney. Think of it as an interview show, but with Jesus.
Jim Bakker.
Praise the Lord. See the things which He has done. Praise the Lord. For the battle has been won. Together we can make it. Together we can reach the world. Together we will praise the Lord.
And now let's welcome our host and hostess, Jim and Tammy Bakker and somebody special.
Building cherry, loving Mary.
Hello! Hello, everybody!
Whoa, how you doing? So nice to see you all. Oh, hi, Tammy Faye.
Hi, Jim Bakker.
You're
And it actually was quite successful. It ran for 13 years, was very popular, was the cornerstone program of the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And in fact, if you dare to watch Trinity Broadcasting tonight, you will still see a show come on in that same time slot every night for 2.5 hours called Praise the Lord. They kind of quit calling it PTL because of the scandal surrounding Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker. But it's still Praise the Lord. It's still there, just as Jim and Tammy launched in 1976. All in all, Jim and Tammy spent 1974 to 1987 with Trinity Broadcasting as the hosts of the PTL Club. But while there, they came under a lot of scrutiny, mainly because of their lavish lifestyle. It was during this time that Tammy started wearing thick makeup. She was famous for crying with the mascara and everything running down her face. They were big on garnering gifts, love gifts from the people that watched PTL, and they had a very loyal following. So they got a lot of money in off this, and it was as a religious organization, it was 100% tax-free. They had several houses, a lot of money, things like solid gold toilets, just outrageous things that you would never have. Also, they were starting to have some marital discord because rumors of Jim having affairs, as well as Tammy just not being happy with the way PTL was going. She still clung to their old desire of just wanting to have a simple ministry for children. She did a lot of singing. She did have a great singing voice. She still recorded a lot of albums and the backing tapes for the show. She still recorded children's albums and did her puppet shows. But that was no longer Jim's focus, and there was a lot of strife in the marriage as a result because she wanted to kind of go back to basics, whereas he did not. So he started seeking solace elsewhere. At least that was the rumor. Also put forth by Jerry Falwell, who will become an integral player a little bit later on, were rumors of Jim Bakker's homosexuality or bisexuality and advances made toward men. Even though none of this was ever founded, it was no more than rumor and his word against other word. That was starting to float out there. Now, in 1979, the first financial cracks in the PTL Club started to form. It came under, Jim and Tammy came under scrutiny by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, who controls all broadcasting, or regulates all broadcasting, started investigating him for misuse of PTL funds, in that he had raised $350,000 in donations and love gifts, assuring his audience it would be used for furthering the broadcasting of the PTL club overseas and sponsoring overseas missionary trips. But instead, the FCC found that this was instead used to make another dream of Jim Bakker's a reality, 𝗟𝐻EG USA, which we have a picture here. It was in the Carolinas, and between Charlotte and Columbia, South Carolina. Think of it as Opryland with Jesus. Very much based off of Opryland in Nashville, Tennessee, kind of a country comes to town kind of thing, but with a Jesus spin. And this was another dream of Jim Bakker. He wanted to have a theme park, and he wanted to sell memberships to his fan base, and we'll get into that. In 1985, another investigation was launched, this time by the IRS, that found that $1.3 million in PTL funds were used for the Bakkers' personal benefit from 1980 to 1983. This is in addition to the salary they received. Jim Bakker, by the early 90s, was making a salary of well over $300,000. So around this time, it was probably like $250,000, something like that, was making a salary there. Tammy had a reported salary of around $100,000, as well as they got royalties from the sale of Tammy's music, their books, because Jim was an avid writer. He wrote a lot of books, mostly on biblical prophecy, which we'll talk about. And they also wrote children's books, and Tammy recorded a lot of music, and she got a deal with some of the big Christian music broadcast distributors at the time, and she got royalties off of that. So what this found is that in addition to their salaries from the ministry, from TBN, as well as their royalties from books, all this is tax-free because it's a church organization. They were also had been found to be using an additional $1.3 million to fund their own lifestyle. You can't do that, and they were fined heavily for it. In addition, you have around this time what I like to call the Heritage Hustle, talking about 𝗟𝐻EG USA, that amusement park. Well, it wasn't just an amusement park. Jim Bakker wanted to go one step further and sell platinum memberships to people. Basically, for a few $1,000s, you would always be able to get tickets, even if it was sold out, and you would also have a room in a set of condos placed on the property where you wouldn't have to worry about hotels. It was all inclusive. Well, he sold a bunch of these memberships. The only problem is he could only house about half of those. So he only built enough of these condos on the premise to house half of them. And within the agreement, he said that there were no blackout dates. There were no restrictions. So literally he had set it up where all of these partners could come at once, knowing he could only house half of them. And that led to another IRS investigation, which also went badly for the Bakkers. But what really toppled their empire was not money, though that was part of it. It was sex scandals. Along with Jim's rumored cheating and homosexual behavior, you had the Jessica Hahn scandal of 1987. Jessica Hahn was a 23-year-old personal secretary that worked for Jim Bakker, and in 1987, she alleged that both Jim and John Wesley Fletcher, who was a co-host of the PTL Club, drugged and raped her in a hotel room. Now, this was investigated. No formal charges were ever brought against Jim Bakker. What did come out is that he had literally paid $279,000 of PTL funds earmarked for overseas ministries, again, to keep Miss Hahn quiet. And she went ahead and went public, and because of this backlash, essentially his ministry was open. He was over. He was defrocked by the Assemblies of God, with whom he had been an ordained minister since his graduation from college. Former friends like Jerry Falwell and Jimmy Swaggart, who were both secretly, even though it was denied, trying to do a hostile behind-the-scenes takeover of PTL. Basically, the Bakkers had to step back, give Paul and Jan Crouch their half of the ministry, and step back and allow 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗏 to come on and take over their half of the ministry. And it was not a good thing. There was a lot of infighting, a lot of he said, she said between these religious leaders, and 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗏 actually came on as a holier-than-thou person and had a press conference to announce the terms of him taking over PTL.
No one, 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗏 or anyone associated with 𗗟𝗏𝗄𝗏, has ever attempted to take over his ministry, whether friendly or hostile takeover. At no time did 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗏 suggest to him that Jimmy Swaggart or anyone else was attempting to take over his ministry. This is dated May 6th. From the desk of Tammy Bakker. This is her letterhead card from the desk of Tammy Bakker. On the back, Rose said, Jerry, Jim, and Tammy gave me this list of things they'd like to receive. Hospitalization insurance. Jim's salary for a lifetime at $300,000 per year. Tammy's salary for a lifetime, $100,000 annually. Rights to books and records. Stock that is left, books and records. Secretary for 1 year, phone bill for 1 year, house on the lake and the furniture in it. 2 cars, security, attorney fees for our Internal Revenue Service problems. Suggest that James Robinson be the host, keep the marriage workshops, and we want a maid for 1 year. I don't see any repentance there.
But eventually that was settled, and actually ownership of it went back to the Crouches, which, if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, that was only right. What was the end case of all of this? Bakker, after Jim Bakker himself, after all this came out and a bunch of appeals, in 1993 was actually sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for IRS and tax evasion and mishandling of funds. Nothing ever came out of the Hahn investigation, but except for the charge of bribery, which was tied into these other financial improprieties, and he was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, where, according to some of his books that he wrote, was the first time he ever read the Bible cover to cover. Go figure. A man making assumptions about what Christ said without ever reading the Bible. Imagine that. In 1992, while Jim was still in prison, Tammy filed for divorce and got her freedom, and she kind of went the other way, whereas Jim, I think, crowed in tighter to being a more fundamentalist religion while in prison. She broke away. She kind of went the way of her son Jay and actually began to accept things like maybe homosexuality is not wrong, maybe there's more to life than this. She actually remarried and kind of went on to live a life of being a gay advocate. She went out and participated in a lot of gay pride parades. She became kind of a gay icon, kind of like a Dolly Parton, though not as big as Dolly, and kind of became a darling of the gay world. It ended up being a gay rights advocate to the day she died. And unfortunately, after a long battle with colon cancer, that's what happened to Tammy. In 2007, she passed away from colon cancer. Rest in peace, Tammy. Like I said, I kind of feel sorry for her. I think she had pure intentions, and they just went waylaid, and then she got sucked in by the money, as it happens to a lot of people. But, you know, I don't know really what she was thinking, but that's just the impression I get. Now, as to Jim, upon his release, he returned to evangelism immediately upon his release. He remarried after getting out of prison to his new wife, Lori, who is also an evangelist. They only dated about 50 days. And now he does the Jim Bakker Show, which is syndicated to many religious channels, including CBN and TBN, where he centers on end of times. He's a big advocate that the end is going to come any time, and he makes his living selling doomsday prepper type meals and bug out packets to his followers. And from what I understand, makes a decent living doing it. Let's check it out.
Offer comes with 22 buckets, plus a bonus of 6 additional buckets for a total of 28 buckets.
I want to show you something. All this food is for a gift of $2,500. 8 years of bulk food. This is what you should be doing. Wow. John, you come on. You're the rice preacher. You told me to do this. Look at, they got shovels. By the way, get a shovel. These are foldable shovels. It'll go in your backpack. This is how you dig the latrine. We made up, they've been cooking during the show. Wow. And this rice is hot. Woo, it just made.
Yes, it just came out.
Wow, that's good. Oh, I mean, they just cooked this rice, you know. But it's hot. This is
the cheesy broccoli rice.
Look at the broccoli in there.
Oh.
Wow. Look at the broccoli. That's good. Why wouldn't you want that on the top of a pizza? If I went gross you out, I would eat right out of this shovel. Wow. Let's dump this in with the rice. There it goes. We're dumping 22 gallons into the rice. There we go. Wow. Into the rice. Now I have 40.
All right, well, that's what Jim Bakker is today. If you're ever flipping through, check it out. It's kind of funny, and it's just like Peter Popoff. He's back. But how do these people keep getting chance after chance when obviously they're crooks, obviously they're charlatans? I don't get it. The human mind and the human heart has an absolutely bottomless capacity for forgiving and forgetting, I guess. What do you think? Did you have any... Did your parents, did you have any ties with PTL or anything back in the day? Anyway, be interested to know. Leave it below. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I really enjoy them. I love you all. Thank you so much. Like, comment, share, subscribe. 𝗙𝗂𝗀𝗶𝗰, y'all. 𝗙𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗏, out.